Zechariah Perek Yud Bet, another complicated and difficult chapter to understand. Seems like a theme recently. Masad Devar Adonai al Yisrael, a pronouncement, a burden upon Israel. Ne'um Adonai notesh shamayim v'yosed aretz v'yotzer ruach adam b'kirbo. The one who stretches out the skies and made the earth form and created the breath of humans in them. We've had this idea of God being the stretcher out of the earth to show God's power in different places. And so it's something here about God's control over all of man and over all of creation, presumably, and that's why such an introduction is being made. Hine anochi sam et Yerushalayim sap ra'al l'chol ha'amim saviv, v'gam al Yehuda yeh v'matzor al Yerushalayim. I'm going to make Jerusalem a bowl of reeling is what I have here for the people all around. Judah shall be caught up in the siege upon Jerusalem, right? So it sounds like all of the nations are going to be coming towards Jerusalem, are going to be, getting ready to lap up like a dog laps up water from its bowl or something of that sort, right? That seemingly is what the people believe are going to happen. The nations all around, they're ready to come. They're going to lay siege to Jerusalem. They're going to, they're working together to go and do it. The Haya, but on Pasuk 3, Pasuk Gimel, Vaya Bayomahu, Asimet Yerushalayim, Eben Ma'amasa L'cholamim, Kol Omseha Starot, Yisaretu, V'nesfu Aleha Kol Goye Haaretz. So when all the nations, when that happens, and they gather against Jerusalem on that day, Jerusalem I will make into a stone, right? And all the people will get the biggest bodybuilders in the world. I don't know the name of any other bodybuilders or former bodybuilders besides Arnold Schwarzenegger, will come and try to lift up the stone, but it will be too difficult. They'll tear their muscles or whatever. They will injure themselves in the process of attempting to defeat Jerusalem. Right? So Jerusalem here is, you think you're going to be able to destroy it, but you won't. Bayomahu numa Adonai ake kosus beti mahon v'rochvo b'shigaon. There's some nice rhyming there. Timahon b'shigaon va'al beit Yehuda efkach et einai v'chosus ha'amim ake be'ivaron. Right, so we have timahon, shigaon, ivaron. What does it all mean? So on that day, God says, I will strike down all of the horses. And there's going to be timahon. It's usually a word used more Talmudically. We have that word bismia. Bismia means surprising. I'm surprised. So they'll be shocked as to how difficult it's going to be. They're going to be panicking. They're going to be going crazy. Shigaon, like mishuga, mishigana, you know that word. And because of the house of Yehuda, and I will strike every horse of the people with becoming an iver, becoming blind. So there's going to be a terrible destruction that's going to people who are attacking Yerushalayim. There are those who understand that this second half of the verse refers to the people from Yehuda who maybe have gathered together with the enemy nations to defeat and destroy Yerushalayim. There are those who then see in this chapter an allusion towards the Maccabim and whatnot, because in many ways the battle was not the Maccabim versus the Greeks, but it was a lot of the Jews who had, we'll say, converted to Greek ideology and thought and sort of left their Jewishness behind in an attempt to try to understand what this chapter is about. Like yesterday's chapter, it's kind of hard to figure out what it's about. But we think in this book, again, as I've said before, it started with the horses and the visions of Zechariah, of the four horses and the figure who was on the horse. And then as opposed to that, we have the great figure who's going to come to Jerusalem, the poor man, the humble man riding in on his donkey, and the understanding that that is perhaps a reference to the Mashiach. So here, the great warriors, the great armies, who their symbol, at least here in this book, seems to be riding on the horse and their chariots, they will be knocked down. Continuing verse 5, Pasuk Va'amru alufei Yehuda belibam, Amtsali Yoshvei Yerushalayim B'Adonai Tzvot Eloheihem. And the clans of Yehuda will say to themselves, those who live in Yerushalayim have, they have made something very difficult for us because of their God. when they see all of the difficulties that have happened to all of the enemies of Yerushalayim, and these are, again, presumably the Jews, people from the tribes of Yehudah who have gone and consorted and joined the enemy, then they will understand that God is on the side of Yerushalayim. Bayomahu asim et alufei Yudah kior eish beitzim uklapid eish ba'amir v'achlu al yamin v'al smol et kol ha'amim saviv v'yashva Yerushalayim o tachteha b'Yerushalayim. On that day, those clans of Yehudah will be inflamed, right? They're going to burn up like a torch among sheaves. They will devour all the besieging people right and left, and Jerusalem will continue on its sites in Jerusalem. Jerusalem will remain, and the enemies, those who waged war against it, they are going to burn up. There's going to be, whether it's a small fire, a bonfire, but Jerusalem will be saved. And we've seen that in this book and in the previous books where God talks about his zealousness and his desire to see. Kaneti Yerushalayim, I have a zealousness for Jerusalem. I'm ready to protect Jerusalem, and that's what we see here. And in verse 7, V'hoshia Adonai et ohalei Yehuda b'rishona leman lo tigdal tiferet Beit David v'tiferet Yoshev Yerushalayim al Yehuda. And God will give victory to the tents of Yehuda first, so that the tiferet, the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Yerushalayim will not be too great for Yehuda. So again, here, part of this difficulty, trying what's the difference between Yehudah and Yerushalayim? We've already seen them as the same. So again, is Yehudah here a reference to these sort of people who've joined the enemies? Is it now that Yehudah and Yerushalayim can be linked together once this war happens? That the victory will come first to those outside Yerushalayim, that the ones who have not joined the enemies, and then will come to Yerushalayim and will have a greater sense of unity between the two. Difficult to understand exactly what he's saying. Bayomahu yagein Adonai ba'ad Yoshev Yerushalayim v'aya nechshal bahem. Bayomahu kid David uveit David kelohim kemalach Adonai lefnehem. On that day, God will protect the people of Jerusalem, those who dwell in Jerusalem, and those who, even those who are nichshal, those who are, it means to trip, those who are weak, they will be like David. That is to say, they will be strong, and the house of David will be like a messenger, an angel of God in front of them, protecting them. So even the weakest of Jerusalem will not be defeated on this day. They will not be injured on this day when God comes to protect Jerusalem, when all of the nations seem to gather around it, ready to pounce on it and destroy it. Further on that day, whenever that day is, V'haya bayomahu avakesh lashmid et kol hagoyim habayim al Yerushalayim. On that day, I will all but destroy, I will desire to destroy all of the nations that come up upon Jerusalem. So, right, again, what does this mean exactly? It's unclear what it means. I want to destroy them. I might destroy them. I'll try to destroy them. V'shafachti al Beit David v'al Sheiv Yerushalayim ruach chein v'tachanunim v'hibitu elai et asher dakaru v'saftu alav k'mispa'ed al hayachid v'hamer alav k'hamer al habechor. But on that day, there'll also be a compassion and a spirit of compassion and sort of pity or forgiveness onto Jerusalem for all those who are slain. The same way that because people cry over their children, and they'll cry over their sons as much as they cry and they moan and they scream on for their oldest children. So is this referring to, again, the enemies of Israel? Is this referring to the Jews themselves, that some of them are going to be killed, even though we just said moments ago that the Jews are not going to be, even the weakest are going to be protected, and then the kings in the Davidic dynasty will be like angels in front of them. Difficult for me, at least me, to understand. The rabbis look at this chapter and understand as an allusion to what's called Mashiach ben Yosef, conception in Jewish tradition that there are two messiahs, the more famous one, the Mashiach ben David, the Messiah from the house of David, but there would be a first one, an earlier one, a Mashiach from Ben Yosef, which is not referenced here in this chapter, but they say that somehow this killing or this mourning over the older child is a reference to this first Messiah, this Messiah from the house of from the tribe or the house of Ephraim or Yosef. And in fact, Rav Kook, in a fairly well-known eulogy, he gave a eulogy for Herzl. Theodor Herzl is beloved today, but I don't think so much, as far as I know, in the ultra-Orthodox world, and they did not love him back then in the ultra-Orthodox world because he did not represent the Talmudic observant Jew. He represented the changing Jew, the Jew who would go back to his land, the Jew who was not observant, the Jew who would be a farmer rather than a studier. And Rav Kook gave a eulogy for him and sort of and alluded to the fact that Herzl can be seen as a Mashiach ben Yosef figure, as a sort of a political leader, the first beginning of the Messianic period, not the full idea, and he has now died, but this is paving the road for that next Messiah to come. So Rav Kook, fairly, I would say, controversial at the time, and could be controversial for other reasons as well. If you go and search for the Rav Kook's eulogy for Herzl, I imagine it's translated into English somewhere on the internet. Continuing in verse 11, Bayomahu Yigdal Misped Yerushalayim Kimispad Hadad Rimon Bibigat Migidon. Here we have another rhyme with the Rimon Bibigat Migidon. On that day, the crying in Jerusalem will be as great as the crying at Hadad Rimon in the plains of Migidon. Is Migidon the city of Megiddo, which was a city in ancient Israel? There are, I think, great archaeological digs and findings in Megiddo. Megiddo, different attempts at understanding what this verse means. There are those who point to the time of Yoshio. There was great king of Israel, Yoshio. He led an incredible reform back towards Torah life and God, and away from idolatry. And he was killed in the valley of Megiddo when he went out to fight against Paro Necho. There was a pharaoh who was going to, if I remember correctly, go and attack the Assyrians. He wanted to go through Israel, and Yoshiyahu didn't want him to come through Israel on his way, and went out with his army, and the Egyptians killed him. And there are those who say that's what this mispay, this eulogy is referring to, the terrible crying that happened on that day over this righteous king Yoshiyahu. There are others, sort of like I was saying earlier, Rav Kook, that this is a reference to the idea of a Mashiach ben Yosef, that there's going to be a lot of crying and wailing on this day, that this great transformational figure in the political struggle of the Jewish people will die. I don't think Herzl died in battle last time I checked. I'm pretty sure he didn't, but nevertheless, so not everything, when things are allusions and metaphors, they don't always line up exactly. Continuing Pasuk Yud Bet, verse 12, V'safta mishpachot levad, Mishpachat Beit David levad, u'b'nishem levad, Mishpachot Beit Natan levad, u'nishem levad. The land will cry, each family by himself, those of the house of David by themselves, and the women by themselves, and the house of Natan by themselves, and their women by themselves. So is this attempting to say that there is a great sense of disunity amongst the people, that they're crying separately, they're crying on their own, they're not together? And it continues with the same idea: Mishpachat Beit Levi levad, u'nishem levad, Mishpachat Hashemi levad, u'nishem levad. The priests by themselves and their women, the house of Levi, and seemingly the women from the house of Levi by themselves, and the family of the Shimis by themselves, and their women by themselves. All of the other families, every family by itself with their women by themselves, everybody will be mourning, on their own, not together. Again, it's a little bit difficult to try to understand what this means, that they're separate, and why the men and women are doing things separately. I guess it's good for sort of a Haredi, very separate male and female, version of the world, and a great separation between men and women. But it's not clear what it is. There are some commentaries who do say that sort of thing, that it's for tzniut, it's for modesty, that the men and women separately they mourn, but it's not clear. There is a completely sort of different interpretation, that I believe that this Hadad Rimon is the reference to an a ancient sort of Assyrian god, and maybe one of the gods is male and one of the gods is female, and as a result of that, maybe that's why they're some are doing it. That's why maybe the men are doing it separately from the women. Again, it's not something that's very, very clear to me, but these chapters have alluded, I believe, people much smarter, greater, wiser, well-read, well-learned than I am. So certainly I have no intention of understanding it better than them. If you understand what I said, wonderful. If you don't, I apologize. In these chapters, it's really, I'm sorry to say, the best that I can do.